It was a tough weekend for the URC sides in Europe, but it's finally over and we're back to proper rugby coming up this weekend. We're going to review the first block of the European Cups, both of them, and look ahead to the festive derbies. Let's start the show. Good evening. Welcome back, everybody. I'm joined by the Rugby ABC, Alan, Ben, and Caolan. Good evening, gents.
Good
Good evening,
evening.
Evening.
guys.
First of all, before we actually get into talking about how everyone got on, has everyone been enjoying Europe for these two weekends?
No,
No, definitely not.
Ambivalent at best, I think.
I think ambivalent is a great word. I like Europe, and I've been a defender of Europe at times because that's what I was reared off of. This, the Sky Sports winter afternoons, like it was fun. But now it's just at the stage where I'm like it's so hard. Like you're about halfway through, say, this weekend, and you're like, well, I can kind of tell that like we know who the top four is going to be in terms of who's going to top the four pools. It's going to be Leinster, Bordeaux or Toulouse, La Rochelle or Leinster, and then probably Northampton. It's like, yeah, I'm kind of getting a bit sick of this now. So it's a drawn out effect, but we had some cracking games, and that'll have to be discussed. Like the Glasgow game was unreal, the Benetton game was really really good, but it's just like, oh no.
Yeah. Alan, obviously, you're the newest of the group. We're all steeped in European history. We're brought up to believe that Europe is the top of everything. Is it fair to say that it's really struggling to catch on in South Africa?
Obviously, I can't speak for anyone back in South Africa, but judging by the crowds who attend the games, apart from Pretoria, and just the general consensus, I think it's a little bit difficult to get your head around at times. I think, I wouldn't go back to South Africa for a week for a holiday. It's still too much travel and effort to do that. So going back there to play a rugby match and then flying back or coming down to play a game in France or England or all that kind of stuff. It's going to take a lot of getting used to. I think the European teams have adapted a lot better to play this kind of rugby and to play in those conditions. I think the South African teams don't have the squads to genuinely compete in most of them. But I suppose the most disappointing thing is that you know is the amount that they're losing by. These are second string teams, and it's almost like you're almost resigned to the fact that your team is going to lose. And I mean, it's one thing to, when the Stormers are playing, for example, it's like they're taking 3 points and going for drop kicks in the first half. You're like, it's going to be tough to win these games like that. And I think I said in the previous week, and I got a little bit of flack for it. I said South African teams struggle to finish off teams, and that's even that gets amplified when you're not leading, and you'll get to the last 20 minutes of any of these games, and you're leaking 20, 25, 30 points in like a 30-minute period. So something has to be done. And personally, from my point of view, I know this isn't going to happen. I would just leave the South African teams out of it and let them have the 2 week rest periods every now and again to help, acclimatize to the games and just prepare for the next weeks because it is a lot of rugby if you include the Currie Cup as well. So
Yeah,
that's
I
my
mean that
personal opinion.
that's the nuance behind it, and everyone's got a different opinion on it. And if the South Africans are currently paying to play in these tournaments, so they've obviously decided they want to be in it, and they've got a right to be. No one says they don't have a right to be. But the nuance in there is that the South Africans are coming in off Currie Cup, Rugby Championship, and then URC, and then into this, which the Northern Hemisphere nations don't have. They just don't have them. So, Ben, you said ambivalence. Like I said, this is supposed to be rugby's Champions League, right? Which is the biggest thing in football. And it used to be, as Caelan said earlier, like
Hmm.
we were raised on it. It was supposed to be the big thing, and there are some clubs, URC clubs, who put Europe above all else. So, but it really does feel like in the last 2 or 3 years, people have just really disengaged with it.
I think you're right. I think the box of clubs that are putting European competition above that in the domestic is shrinking. And I felt this weekend in particular, there were a lot of lopsided results. I think apart from maybe a couple of games, Glasgow, Toulon and Benetton, everything. I mean, look at Toulouse Exeter tonight. It was just an embarrassment. I think I watched the like second half of that, and Toulouse were just running through the gears. They did send a strong team over, but it was very, very easy for them. Um, so yeah, I just feel a bit nonplussed and ambivalent is definitely the word, the feeling I've had all weekend and certainly last weekend. It's nice to see Edinburgh win, but Bayonne didn't really send that much of a side on Friday night, and it was a bit of a walkover. Um, whether the I don't know. I think the South African teams do need to be in it because otherwise it would make the administration of the URC really difficult because, well, the clubs have got to play for something if they're not going to be playing for top 4 or top 8. There needs to be that carrot dangled of European competition, but there needs to be another look at the format because, well, you look at the Heineken, the Champions Cup, 4 of those 6 teams go through to a round of 16. Do we get rid of the round of 16? Just go straight through to a quarter final? I sometimes feel that bigger is worse. I think just having it smaller, just having a bit more jeopardy in it, that each game does matter. Because I think the 4 pool games, if you pick up a couple of losing bonus points, which we did against Gloucester the first week, we only need to win one of our next 2 games and we'll be into the round of 16 in the Challenge Cup. So it just means that it does give clubs the opportunity to run out second strings and sometimes third strings. But ultimately, I think it's 1 round too many. And I think I'd just get rid of the round of 16.
If I can just say, interject, sorry to interrupt. If I can just say that watching these games, watching the tournaments, and the way that the way the games are being managed, it feels very much like a French competition. The discipline from the French teams, it feels like a top 14 competition.
I agree.
It almost feels like an
a
extension
lot of the
that.
games have felt very top 14-y to me. That's an observation that I had as well.
Mm.
So for people, I guess for South African fans who kind of weren't paying attention to this competition during its pomp, it used to be formatted like the World Cup. So it would be a lot fewer teams get into it now. In the years of the Celtic League, the qualification would be based on geography. So always the top Welsh, Scottish, Irish, and Italian teams were guaranteed a spot, which meant that sometimes you would get a low down team in the Celtic League getting in, and people didn't like that, and they got rid of it quite recently. But it used to be, like I said, set out like a World Cup, and it would be the top going through the pools. Like when Scarlets got to the semi-finals, we lost our first 3 pool games and then won our second 3, and it was home and away. It was like the Champions League in football.
Champions League, yeah.
Or how the Champions League used to be. That's changed. It's a story another day.
Well, it's followed rugby, which has made that worse as well. I mean,
it's actually structured like a league.
I don't get excited about the
The
Champions
only
League
thing that has
anymore for the
improved
same
in
reason.
football is the lower tiers, which I think the Challenge Cup has actually taken an even bigger hit, ironically. In rugby.
So it used to be structured, and then it would be a lot more special. But Caolan, it's managed to poison its own water. I know you're not a big EPCR fan, and never have been.
Yeah, we did a long podcast on this, myself and yourself, last year, Hugh. Way too long. I'm not a big EPCR fan. They've promised everything, they've delivered nothing. Look, even the competition as it is now, it's fraught with difficulties. Like Investec, we don't know how big of a sponsorship they're giving and where that compares to in years gone by. I know the old Heineken deal back when it was the Heineken Cup was a massive money deal. It was tied into Heineken's sponsorship of the Champions League at the time. I know the broadcast rights, obviously, like Premiersports are doing a great job. I think the games that they cover, I think they're giving more impetus to the games they're covering compared to, say, BT Sport. Do you know what I mean? Like I turned on the first game today, which was Bath against Benetton. Now the Connacht came on as well, but you had Ryan Wilson and Topsy Ojo there, 2 pundits who know both of those teams. A very good presenter in Claire Thomas, 2 good commentators. It was very well done, and that's been themed. But they're not paying a lot of money for these rights because TNT did not come back to the table after EPCR tried to play around with it. And like the financials are a massive factor. The travel is a huge factor. Like there's an airline sponsor of this competition that seems to get no criticism when these conversations about flights and everything come up, which is, it's typical in a lot of ways, but it's another one of those factors. And I do think the European competition, as we know it, is dying in front of us, if I'm honest. I think interest is dwindling. Is there any sold out grounds at the weekend? Maybe Van in the Challenge Cup, but like
La Rochelle are always sold out.
La Rochelle, yeah, fair.
Edinburgh wasn't sold out. Definitely not. There was a couple of corners.
None of the Irish grounds have sold out yet. Like Connacht only had like 3,000 last week for the game against Edinburgh. I know that doesn't help when you're playing team in your own league. I don't think Toulouse sold out last week, if I'm right. So like that's kind of when you're looking at Toulouse, Munster, Leinster, Leicester, teams like that, and if they're not selling out or coming close to selling out,
Bordeaux sell out every week as well. But we're literally talking about French clubs who sell out every week, regardless. Yeah. They could be playing 10.
They're the exception to the rule.
That's the screw up with EPCR, I think, is that especially with the Challenge Cup, there are teams that play each other domestic, just playing each other for either a second or a third time. I think it's okay when it gets to knockout rugby, you just get who you're drawn against depending on where you finish. But in the pool stage, you really shouldn't be playing teams you play in your own league. I think that's quite frustrating, and I think it's hard to get excited about that.
But the pool is banjacks because of it, and I know. Look, we'll get on to Northampton beating the Bulls, but like the Bulls had, the Bulls don't play Munster, so that's a factor in that pool. They have Saracens away, Northampton at home. Like they only play 4 to 6 teams in the pool, obviously, or 4 to 5 teams in the pool. And that changes it. Like when you sit down and look at the fixtures, you're not going at who's the best. You're looking at who's going where, because it's not like playing everyone twice. And that's probably the number one flaw. I know the round of 16, I do get your point, Ben, but I think, to be fair, the round of 16 has been entertaining, even if it has been predominantly home team has gotten through almost every time. I think it's like one of the last 32 games, 2 of the last 32.
Didn't the last year, wasn't there like a situation where a lot of the teams had already played each other in the last,
Yeah.
was it
Yeah,
like the
that
second
happens
round of
a
the
lot.
quarter, and there was
Yeah.
like
Was it
only like
Leinster? Was it Leinster against Leicester a repeat, or Munster
Leinster
against
La Rochelle was a
Northampton?
repeat
the
quarterfinal.
Stormers played someone who they'd played
stage.
earlier as well.
La
So
Rochelle as well.
Storm
Actually,
was
La
La
Rochelle
Rochelle,
played 2
yeah.
teams twice.
yeah, so I
Um,
mean you can do without that for sure.
Yeah.
These rounds
Munster
of
Northampton was the other one
Mm.
as well. And but
Oh,
like
yeah.
that'll happen. Like it's only 24 teams, 16 get through. That's going to happen. I don't really mind it because I think, to be fair, round 4 into round of 16 has been decent. There's been a lot of fun and interest in permutations come round 4. But I think the only problem is when you're here and you're halfway through, you're looking at it and you're like, yeah, I can kind of tell who's going through. It's really just like 3 or 4 spots and then the placings that's going to be
Yeah.
decided.
And let's be honest, having 8 English teams in it is ruining it.
Yes, should be only 4.
It's completely damaging the credibility of the competition. These teams are not competitive. Yes, I know they picked up some big wins, but the 2 teams top of the English Premiership currently are both 0 from 2. So it's not a meritocracy, unfortunately. And the English are the only ones with multiple seats on the EPCR board. They get one through PRL and they get one through the RFU, whereas all of the URC nations, apart from Italy, I think, are represented by one voice, which is the URC voice. So
The 1/3
which is a
of the
massive change
Champions
to what
Cup
it used to be.
is English.
yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't sit well with me at all.
yeah.
So South Africa goes into. Do we get a voice? How does it work with South African then?
Just URC.
Currently you don't, because you're not stakeholders.
Yeah.
Next year
At the
you
end of
become
this season,
stakeholders.
because a lot of South Africans won't understand this as well. So, mate, if we could just have a quick rundown, you guys
go
understand this
for it.
stuff better than me.
Okay, so hang on. Let me.
The way
Can
it
someone
used to
put?
be was basically the English, the French, the Irish, the Welsh, the Scottish had it wasn't exactly equal, but a fairly equal representation on the board. What ended up changing it all, what was the catalyst, was when BT came in and offered massive money to take Premiership rights. They were like, we'll also pay for European Cup, and tried to say that to the PRL, who got onto the LNR. And like, again, there's LNR and there's FF4, whereas there's just IRFU in Ireland. And that kind of caused this winds of change. Whereas now it's very much, it's URC, Prem, RFU, LNR, and it's very much focused towards who caused the division towards EPCR. It is focused towards England and France. Wouldn't that be right, Hugh?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, the board of directors, according to Wikipedia, which I believe is this particular one is up to date. So England are represented, like I said, through the RFU and through Premiership Rugby Limited. France are represented through LNR, which is the governing body that runs the top 14 and the Pro D2. Italy are represented through the FIR, which is their union. And Ireland, Italy, Scotland, South Africa, and Wales are all represented through one single United Rugby Championship board member.
Which is ridiculous.
The power struggle. Well, no, it's not the power struggle. There's the lack of power.
Well, I think it was a power struggle originally. I think that was the big issue. I think the issue was the English clubs felt like they did not have enough power over this competition. And famously as well, if you want to go back far enough, in 1999, the English clubs pulled out of Europe for the season. The year that Ulster won it, it was basically an Irish, Welsh. I don't even know if all Welsh teams were in it. I think only half the Welsh teams were in it. Irish, Welsh, French, in it that year. So like, it's always been about power. It's always been a power struggle. And I think that's why I laugh so much when you do read these articles or the podcast headlines or whatever, and it's English people looking at South Africa, or they're looking at Premiersports or whatever, and it's like, The reason we are here is not because of the French, and it's partly because of the French, in fairness, because the French rugby was very different 10 years ago to where it is now. But it's not because of the Irish, the Scottish, the Italians, the Welsh, because of the English and French. But there has been no real coverage of that, I feel like, in recent years. It's always just been, what's the problem? Why are we here? And never what happened 10 years ago to get us to this point.
To provoke it, yeah.
Yeah, I have to, going back just on Premier Sport, and Caolan, you mentioned the job they've been doing. I have been a little bit disappointed at times with how much they've just given like different colored microphones to TNT, and it is just TNT's like hyper English focused coverage. And I feel like when you've got an existing customer base that is predominantly URC fans and top 14 fans, there's been no promotion of the top 14 through Premier Sports uh,
And they
broadcast
own it
coverage.
because they buy it from Canal Plus, don't
Yeah,
they? So they have
and they
weekly coverage.
broadcast it. So and
Yeah.
like TNT would never do that. TNT would promote like I don't know, two drunks fighting over a pound note if they were televising it.
Also, they used to advertise
Tyson
NASCAR,
Fury
which
against
is
U6
basically the
next
same thing.
weekend. Fury U6 next weekend, isn't it?
Oh yeah. But yes, so that's disappointing. And it also has been like they got all the pundits, and the thing about TNT's coverage is that their like pundit panel is made up of Welsh and Irish pundits predominantly, and like having them coming in, they're in the habit of just covering the English teams. So they've come in and they've been like, oh yeah, they're the Welsh and Irish voices, but they're still covering England and they're still talking about England. So I've been a little bit disappointed with how much, and I understand because obviously it's a huge opportunity for Premier Sports to increase their subscribership. So I understand it from a business point of view, but I would have liked a bit more of an acknowledgement of existing customers, to be honest.
They've
So
done
yeah.
a good job in terms of how they assembled the panel. That was kind of more my point. Like, opening night, they had Ryan Wilson, they had Simon Zebo, they had Lawrence Delalio, they had a commentator who does a podcast with Jim Hamilton, and they had someone else on the first game. At the weekend, they had like Rob Kearney and Lawrence Delalio doing La Rochelle. I do feel like they've got good balance and haven't gone entirely, because I think Premier Sports URC coverage, the main issue is it can be very tribal. It can be very much the Friday night game. Who can we get there on a Friday, and go from there? I think there's been a lot more planning here, and I think it's been good. But as you said, they have had to look at it and go, well, we were a lot cheaper than TNT Sports in the UK. Let's try and position ourselves to rugby fans and push it. And to be fair, I think the likes of Topsy Ojo has been really good. I've really enjoyed Matt Banahan this weekend. He did 2 of the games, and I really enjoyed his insights.
The La Rochelle game.
Was he doing La Rochelle?
think
I only seen the second half of that, you see. So
I can't remember.
he did the Baths game today. So that was more recent to me. And like, to be fair, they've also, here in Ireland, they have shown both of Connacht's games over Champions Cup games, which, look, I'd prefer if there was an arrangement with maybe TG Cahir, a national broadcaster here, and just sublease it or whatever. But the fact that they're doing that, I think, is a good thing, because we only have 4 teams. Premier Sports has a separate division in Ireland. They are based out of Ireland. Ryan Nugent is their CEO. I have liked the fact that they have done that, but maybe I'm just a bit biased, but I have enjoyed it so far.
I would like to think that once South Africans get a part of this deal, come into the fold, so to speak, that we will have a better say on a bit more of a say as to like the people who can commentate and have a bit more. The people who, you know what I mean, the people who are commentating on the games and stuff like that, because there's not many South Africans, and I understand
that part is very annoying. I must say, you only hear South Africans when it's a game in South Africa being simulcasted or whatever the word is.
Yeah, and then you've got like the guy, the Macfield or Skalkberg or whoever it is. So I would like to think, but I think going forward, knowing that we're going to be part of the European fold and stuff, because you hear people like Skalkberg and Bucky's Buerta talking about it and how awesome the history is, and Brian Habana, because they've played in it. And they've, some of them have obviously won it and stuff like. So they talk very, very highly of it. But to engage a South African public, you need to really push the product to them. And that, while they are getting on board with the URC, I think the numbers are constantly going up with attendances and people going to games and that kind of thing. Your big draws that you would want to be playing in these games are not playing in this for the South African teams. And they're not there. And if you want to draw, if you really want to get the South African public engaged, you need to be playing the people like. And I understand it's difficult, people like Ian Etzebeth. You need to be playing your big names, and that will get people more engaged. It's all good going to like a game on like a Friday night to support your local team, but you're getting thumped by 50, 60 points. They just won't go again, you know.
Let's get into talking about some of the action then. So we're not going to do a review of each game. We're going to just look back, per nation on what's happened so far. So if we start with the South Africans, which feels like the biggest narrative is Stormers 0 for 2, Bulls 0 for 2, which is a big surprise. Sharks 1 and Lions 1. So let's start with the Bulls then, because there's Bulls fans are starting to have getting a bit frustrating now. Now, if you look at Bulls' results, they've lost one URC game, which is against the Scarlets, and they've lost both European Cup games against Saracens and Northampton, and they'll hate that because if they'd have beaten those English teams, then that's a statement. So, Alan, all is not well in Pretoria.
I think they're losing patience with Jake White. I'm sure they'll be losing patience with him, which it's quite funny, really, because he does have pedigree when it comes to coaching tournament teams like this. He's coached in France. He's obviously coached in Australia, so he knows what he's doing. I think the Bulls shouldn't have lost that game. I think there was a higher expectation on them. There were a lot of fans at the game, and they had their opportunities. But it comes back to this whole thing about adapting to what's in front of you. And finishing off your chances. And if you get to the last 20 minutes of the game, they look completely out on their feet, apart from Cameron Honeycomb, who got man of the match, I think. So it's there, but some of the decision making by some of the players at certain times, some of the handling, really, really bad. And Jake White will not be happy with that. But I think they are starting to look around, the fans at the Bulls, and they're starting to look what other coaches can we look at, because they are definitely losing patience with Jake White. I think I'm not a Bulls fan. I'm just going on what you see on the social media and that kind of thing, because rugby fans can be a bit abrasive at times, but I do feel like there's a degree. I mean, I think Johan Goosen is taking a bit of a battering as well. I don't think he's necessarily covered himself in glory over the last couple of months. So very, very short fuses, not much patience in Pretoria when it comes to their rugby.
Yeah, you can understand that, but one guy who's even that but times 10 is John Dobson. Goodness me, it's not going well for the Stormers. I'm sorry for laughing. I love the Stormers. I appreciate that I laughed just then. I love the Stormers. Check all my back catalogue. I've got a Western Province jersey. I love the Stormers. So that's the reason why I get so worked up about them when they're doing badly. But Alan, they're doing badly.
They are doing so badly. And the thing is, I think I said in the chat about a week ago, I said I'm a bit worried about going forward with, it's like almost as if it's come to fruition now. That Marnie Libok injury, as I watched him lying on the ground there, that's a bad injury to pick up. And we've had this conversation, and I know there's people that have commented on previous videos about me criticizing the Stormers. I think I've been pretty fair on all of the teams, but the game plan that the Stormers are using at the moment, I understand they've got a second string team, and I saw a bit more of a game plan yesterday, but that injury to Marnie Libok and you're losing games in Cape Town like that is all off the back of a game plan. I know they've got a lot of players out and they're playing second stringers and a lot of young guys, but they've got a really tough bunch of matches coming up in the URC and the Heineken Cup again. It's not the Heineken Cup, the Champions Cup. So it's going to be difficult for them, but they are, it's all red alert. The only plus I would guess would be that they're playing, I think, 3 of the 4 Welsh teams in the last couple of weeks of the URC. So you'd like to think they can maybe try and get up the table and not finish rock bottom.
Yes, it's kind of taken the heat off John Plumtree at the moment. He was the one who was under pressure last season, and now he's just sat at home thinking, at least people are more mad at Jake White and John Dobson than they are at me for a change.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
they got tonked by Leicester just now. Won their first game obviously comfortably against Exeter. But I put it in the group chat. It's when the Sharks play their first team, it is kind of, we'll just turn up and win. We don't there doesn't seem to be much. Sia Khaleesi's playing well. That's what we can say about the Sharks at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the Sharks are an awesome team to watch when it's clicking, and they obviously won the Challenge Cup last season which put everyone on red alert for them. I think the fans were all hoping that they were going to take it up a level, but they don't have the luxury of doing that because you've got a team full of Springboks. They need to be rested. I don't know the exact amount of games that they're mandated to play every year and the amount of rest weeks that they're supposed to get. But Russie is quite strict with that kind of stuff. So it's obviously been decided beforehand who's going to play what games and how they're going to go about it. But there's too many Springboks missing to make a genuine impact on, you win a game and then you lose the next one by that amount of points. It's, one step forward, two steps back when it comes to the SA teams, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, but the Lions got a win this weekend, having lost their first game out in, I was about to say Swansea, wasn't it? Swansea was in Llanelli. But do you think the Lions can have a shot at winning the Challenge Cup?
I'd like to think so, but I think they're going to prioritise, obviously, their standing in the URC is a bit higher. I think most of us would pick the URC over the Champions Cup, maybe. I think Leinster have probably got their eyes on both, but I think as a general rule, the South African teams would want a higher ranking in the URC and then focus on the Champions Cup at a later date. I can't see how our squad depth is going to manage. And a team like the Lions as well is, there's all these news reports coming out about Nahomba moving now. And this is
to where?
Yeah. Where was he going again?
Japan.
I didn't even read the article.
Well, that's a bit boring.
I sent it to you there. If you scroll up on the group, it's there.
Yeah. But this is a perennial problem for the Lions. It's every couple of years someone comes along and takes a player. You don't really get any much continuity with them. So, it just is what it is with teams. Although it was good to see, it was almost like a home game because the stadium was pretty empty, wasn't it? All empty red seats.
Loads of empty red seats. Yeah, so the Ospreys Lions game was moved to Llanelli because Swansea.com got storm damaged in Storm Dara, bless you. And so that was a bit funny. I guess before we move on to the Welsh teams, then anyone else got any thoughts on the South Africans? How they've been getting on or not?
I'd be disappointed because obviously Munster are in the same pool as the Bulls. So I'm disappointed in two ways. One, because they let us down by not beating Northampton, which would have helped the group massively. But I watched that game in its entirety, and I watched most of Sharks Extra last week. And you do just get the sense, when South African teams are locked and loaded and fully invested in this, they have a great chance. But then you get the game like the Sharks Leicester game on Saturday night, and it's when they check out, they're gone. They're not in the same place. I have theorized if maybe the South African teams are given a bit of an incentive to not play games in South Africa and maybe base them out of England for the 2 weeks or 4 weeks of the pool stages and just go, right, let's just see how this works from a competition standpoint and see how it's going. Now, obviously, come knockout stages, you'd have to look into that because, I don't know, it's just annoying that South African teams, you can nearly book them in for 2 wins. Obviously, it hasn't gone that way with obviously the Stormers and the Bulls losing at home, but that's how it felt in recent years. And I think that's kind of part of the predictability of the competition as well.
Yeah, I would say that, but obviously South Africans will come in for a lot of stick for that, but the French are the same. And to be fair, the English do that as well. The English don't play away from home in the Champions Cup. They send B teams. So it's just like we said at the beginning, it's the nature of the competition at the end. So talking about
I just want to say before we move on that the Bulls should have won that game against Northampton. They had plenty of opportunities to win it, but they just had to finish better. So it's not all doom and gloom for us.
So talking about the Welsh then, speaking of doom and gloom, so the Ospreys, it was funny, it was like a mirrored weekend. So in the first weekend, the Ospreys were the only team that won, and in the second weekend, they were the only team that lost. Of course, all the Welsh teams are in the Challenge Cup, so it's a lower level of opposition. But a bonus point win in Llanelli for the Ospreys to start off the campaign. Very much all the good work undone with a trip over to Montpellier, losing 59 points to 15, and that was 2 late consolation tries to put some gloss on that scoreboard. I mean, boys, I don't know, from an outsider's point of view, something's gone wrong at the Ospreys, hasn't it?
Has to have. We had this conversation before Europe, didn't we? About the Ospreys and how it's kind of gone stale.
Yeah. Now
Toby announced his departure too soon. And
I mean,
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know, you take your foot off the gas a bit, but
kind of the whole point that I'd made previously is in away games, the Ospreys just have a history of chucking away games under two big boots. But that's not what happened in Montpellier. They sent the full team. Jack Morgan and Dewey, they were both there. And they're the kind of, if those two are playing, then it's the first team. And Dan Edwards was back, and I think he's by far their best 10. Owen Williams at 12 doesn't really work, and he's so different from Kieran Williams that it's kind of like, well, what's going on with the game plan here? Why not move Owen Watkins to 12, where he is arguably more comfortable, and play someone else at 13? And it's, yeah, like I said, it's something's just gone wrong there, and the way that the tries were just flying in. The BBC, the guy Gareth Griffiths who wrote the BBC write-up, absolutely laid into them. Absolutely laid into them. He said, people will talk about the budgets, but this is nothing to do with budgets. This was a terrible performance, etc., etc. So that that was remarkable. And it would have been a gut punch as well to have to move their home game away. They still managed to get a couple of thousand fans in Llanelli, but obviously it's not a long car ride from Swansea to Llanelli. So there was that. Cardiff, I think, will be happy with their results so far. They got a losing bonus point, 4-try bonus point out in Lyon, which they'll maybe look at that scoreline and think it wasn't great, but then they got another one. Oh, Alan, in the South African slot, we didn't talk about the Cheetahs.
No, I
A
know
draw
we were
with
going to get there. They lost
a,
as well, don't worry.
a draw with Perpignan 2020.
Yeah.
Apparently, Perpignan, it took them like 30 hours to get from France to Amsterdam, which, if you're not familiar with a map, like check on an atlas, it's not far. So
No.
you
apparently
get the Eurostar from Paris to Amsterdam in 2 hours.
Apparently they were sharing a private jet with La Rochelle, and La Rochelle got delayed for the storm, which meant the jet wasn't there. So it was all a big mess. But anyway, yeah, so Cheetahs a draw and a loss. But Cardiff got the 4 tries against Cheetahs in the end. I think they'll be happy with that. Dragons got the win up in Newcastle after a disappointing home loss to Montpellier. 0 points in the second half, sorry. 14 points to 18. They would have hoped to have won that, but they got the win up in Newcastle. First away win in a good while for the Dragons. So that's a good fillip for them going into the festive derbies. And Scarlets, I'm pretty happy as a Scarlets fan. Going out to Bayonne, kind of feared the worst, especially with the first half. The way that game went was very dominant for Bayonne, but got back into it and finished within a point as well. They're kind of reminiscent of the Glasgow game, of worried we might get thumped and then gutted we didn't win in the end, which is progress. And then the Black Lion game today, which I watched, went on for 2 and a bit hours. It was a bit of a mess of a game. God bless Dave Rogers, who was on comms, like guiding us all through it. A messy game. I thought Black Lion showed a lot in the game, to be fair, despite what some of the stats of the game might say. I thought Black Lion really did show something. It's mostly a Georgian national team. So I'm happy that Scarlets got, in the end, a decent scoreline on them. 5 tries. Archie Hughes, friend of the channel, got a try at the end of his first Scarlets try. So I'm happy with that. So I think Cardiff and the Scarlets will be happy enough. They've both got 6 points on the board now. Dragons have gotten, I think, 6 points as well. The Ospreys, I don't know, they're not out of it. I think they just need to park the Montpellier away result, to be honest. So that's the Welsh. Let's talk about the Scottish and Italians next. So let's start with Glasgow then, Ben. So a very comfortable win against a pretty meh Sale Sharks in the first weekend, followed by a moral victory in Toulon.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a good point. I think Glasgow could be quite happy with how their first 2 games have gone. I think against Sale, they're particularly good. George Horn's try, was unbelievable. I don't know how he's done that.
He didn't even get nominated for try of the round. Absolute theft.
Yeah, I thought that was that's definitely a fraudulent selection committee on that one. It was easily one of the best tries of the season, let alone the weekend. I think it was just impeccable. Yeah, I'm done. And then getting that result away in Toulon today, I think was pretty good. Johnny Matthews ensuring they got the 2 bonus points with that very, very late try.
That's very Glasgow. That's very Glasgow. It's like what their away trip to the Sharks as well. Kind of same thing. Yeah,
indeed. And I think Glasgow are definitely, kind of been picked by quite a few pundits as a one of the shouts for the Champions Cup this season. And I think yeah, with those two opening games, they can be pretty happy.
And the Berg, I know
Yeah,
I'm told it wasn't a great game down in Gloucester round one.
no, it wasn't. That was on the Friday. Yeah, we've had two Friday night games. Gloucester, the first game. I knew we were sending a bit of a second string. Freddie Douglas had his, starting game. Unfortunately, he's got a really bad knee injury, and I don't know how long he's going to be out for, which is a shame because he literally played 2.5 games of professional rugby, and he looked like he'd be someone that we maybe blood against Black Lion and Van probably after Christmas in those sort of round four, really three and round four of the pool stage. But yeah, the main thing about coming to Gloucester is we could have won that game, and I think if we wanted to win that game, we would have sent down a stronger side. But I think after the autumn test, it was really important for people like Doohan and Darcy to get a rest, Jamie Ritchie, etc. And then to come away with a bonus point within 3 points. It was it 15-13, 15-12, I can't remember the top of my head.
You've done us a couple
Um,
of favours by Tonkin Bayonne and limiting Gloucester. You've helped the Scarlets as well.
yeah, yeah, and obviously we don't play each other, so
Yeah.
we obviously get because we don't play each other. No one's there's we are all winners in that respect, aren't we? The Bayonne game was pretty good, 8 tries. We absolutely dominated from start to finish. Cami Lopez, I know I put this in the group chat on Friday, but he's carrying some timber now, honestly. But I think he played the full 80 minutes. Maybe
Yeah,
got
he's
30,
been really good in the top 14.
but
He was top scorer last year, I think.
Yeah.
yeah, but Bayonne were all over the shop on Friday night, apart from a couple of tries. Not too much. We got tries from all over the park again, which was really good to see. Darcy was, I know I rave about Darcy, but I think it's justified. He was again absolutely fantastic on Friday night. An assist and 2 tries. Mosesi Tuipulotu got his first try for the club, which I think was an important, kind of monkey to get off his back because he's not had the greatest sort of start. But I think it leads nicely into next weekend when we have to play Glasgow and Hampden. Whether he starts and faces his brother or not, I don't know. I think that's up for debate. I don't know if Sean Everett might hold him back and go, "Look, I want to play someone a bit more now." So whether it's Mark Bennett if he's fit, or Matt Scott or James Lang instead, and then have Matt Curry on the outside of him. I'm not sure how he'll make that decision with that, but yeah, both they played. Matt Curry played really well again. He's been rewarded with a new contract. So has Doohan, and I think I was surprised. I was definitely surprised about that. I thought the talk was he was going. Um, but I don't think he's just staying in Edinburgh Rugby. I think he's got a pretty strong fledgling business that he has recently started up, and I don't think it would be in his interests to just suddenly disappear off if that
Let me
business is
guess,
going well.
protein shakes.
Believe so. I can't remember the top of my head, but I think it's started up quite well, and I think he's based it in Edinburgh. So you don't want to be leaving that ship if it's sailing pretty well. Yeah, it was good. Friday night was good, and I think we'll comfortably go through that pool stage. I'd like to think we'll beat Black Lion and Van won, didn't they? I think over the weekend, off the top of my
Beat
head.
Gloucester at home.
Um,
They
and
lost
I
to
think
Black
that'll
Lion
be
away though.
yeah. Again, it just depends on what team we send to France, and I think it'll be a really interesting game to watch because both those teams we've never played before, and I like watching us play different opposition. We seem to play Gloucester all the time, like it was last year, and it
Yeah.
was a bit like with Saracens. We played Saracens 2 or 3 years in a row. So it's nice to actually face new
I'm a bit
opposition.
jealous that you're going to Von. That's a great away day.
I was quite tempted to go, but it's second week in January, and it's
Yeah.
Brittany, which is not going to be the nicest place to go in terms of weather. I can imagine it'd be quite cold, wet, and windy that time of year.
Yeah.
But yeah, happy,
Yeah.
and then I think it's been, and Edinburgh needed to get performances like that because as we've discussed, URC form has been iffy at best. So a double
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah. Going on to the Italians then. So we had a URC game to start off with Zebra against Connacht. We'll talk about that when we do the Irish. And then Zebra lost at home to Leon.
Narrowly.
I saw some creators. Have you seen much of this, Caolan? Because I saw some Italian creators disappointed by that. That was there for the
I
winning.
was following it along just because this was a 3 o'clock game, I think, and 3 o'clock yesterday was the Ulster game, so I was kind of following along. I did not expect to see Zebra getting any sort of result when I seen that Leon team. It wasn't full strength, but strong enough that I thought that they'd pull clear. So
Semi Randranger and Sam Matavesi were playing.
yeah, and I think Monty might have been on the bench as
Yeah,
well.
Montiano scored.
So like to get a result of any sort is really good for Zebra. I think we have seen it this year that the amount of one score games they're in seems to be increasing again. Like that Lions game before I'm gonna say before the November break. I can't remember when exactly it was. And then obviously this one as well. And then, of course, with Benetton then today. Yeah, today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yesterday.
it was.
Was it today?
Benetton was today.
It was
Benetton was
today,
definitely today.
Okay.
Depending on when you're listening to this.
Yeah.
And they obviously got a massive result after just no showing last week. So I think in some ways it's been 2 rounds that have kind of epitomized the Italian URC season, where 2 excellent results in relative terms on one weekend, and 2 results they'd be really disappointed with the other weekend, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Benetton would badly needed that. Badly needed that. I did a post where I was asking, do
They
need to ask
tried to lose it.
questions because
Yeah, they had 4 or 5 opportunities in the last 10 minutes, and
Butchered
fumbles,
3
knock-ons. Yeah,
dead cert
yeah,
tries. One for a
and
knock on over the line.
breaks as
One
well,
was
wasn't
held
it?
up because he went to roll again, and the other one was just 3v1 and he throws the pass into touch.
yeah. So Benetton needed that win to get nilled. Like if you look at Benetton's fixture list, they've had tough fixtures. They've had very tough fixtures. But you have to look at the score lines, and the score lines in those games, like 28-0 out in Claremont. That's literally a walkover. That's what you get awarded for a walkover. So that's never a
Might as
good
well
one.
not turned up.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
it was
mean,
poor. Yeah.
with that squad, you can't be getting nilled by anybody anywhere. So that placates people, I think, with Benetton. And like you said, Zebra unlucky against Leon. So that leaves us to talk about the Irish. So, Caolan, where do you want to start with the Irish then? Because
We'll start with Connacht because it feeds in.
because Irish rugby media, which is now Irish Rugby Blue Sky, because you're not on Twitter anymore, any of you,
I'm still on Twitter. Excuse
has
me.
has been chatty over the last week.
I mean, thanks to Midi Olympique for giving us something at Christmas time, the 12 days of Christmas, and they dropped this editorial bomb being like, how are we all supposed to compete? But that's a different day's conversation. We'll get onto that later. Starting with Connacht, because I think hands down, Connacht have been the best of the Irish teams the last 2 weeks. Made tough work of it at times, but a very rotated Connacht team with no internationals. Sorry, Keane Prendergast started this weekend, but none of their other internationals featured 2 bonus point wins. They're top of that pool. Now, the caveat is they have their 2 toughest games to come, with Leon at home and Cardiff away. Both are very sticky. Leon always care about Challenge Cup, and Cardiff are always very good at home against Irish teams, and they always care about Challenge Cup as well.
Mhm.
So both of them will be tricky, but I think Connacht have been the best of the provinces so far. And with those 2 results, they've mixed and matched their squad. Che Mullins, who was an Olympian during the summer, got his first Connacht cap last weekend, scored a hat-trick, started again this weekend and scored another try, which is really cool to see. One of 2 Irish Olympians to make their provincial debuts this weekend. We'll go on to that in a minute with Zach Ward of Ulster. But yeah, Connacht's definitely the best of the Irish so far. I think it's fair to say. Yes, it's Challenge Cup. Yes, they haven't really faced the 2 most difficult teams in Perpignan and Zebra, but 10 points from 10, and that's the metric that matters.
And a bonus point away win in France is not to be sniffed at by anyone.
No, absolutely not. Definitely.
So Ulster then next. Oh, they had a tough old start.
I mean, I forgot I tweeted this before, but right before the European Cup started, I went into the top 14 table. They always post that graphic on Instagram every Sunday night,
Yeah.
and it's like 1 Toulouse, 2 Bordeaux, and I was like, oh, that's fitting because that's literally Ulster's next 2 games in that order.
Yeah.
You wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy, whether that's Saracens or whoever it might be.
You might wish it on Leinster.
I can't say that anymore. Ben can say that. I can't say that anymore.
I can say so. I can definitely agree with Saracens. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm happy for them to play the hardest teams all the time.
Yeah. But for Ulster, like I do feel for them. Like they've shipped 100 points in the first 2 games without actually looking that badly.
Some of the tries against Toulouse were very soft. There was a couple of transition tries where literally not a finger was laid on a Toulouse player. I know they're good, but come on.
Yeah, no, there was that. But then I think they really had it. Like they deserved more than 0 from the Bordeaux game. That game was there for them. But they started to tire. I don't think their bench is where it needs to be. Like I was running through the squad with injuries. They're without Tom Stewart, obviously Martin Moore retired. They'd no Alan O'Connor this weekend. Pack is relatively the same, but then no John excuse me. They had no John Cooney, no James Hume, no Stockdale, no Balakoon. That's most of your first choice backline gone before you have the likes of Ben Carson's out injured, Stuart Moore's out injured, Ben Moxham's out injured. So it has been really unlucky timing for Ulster. Massive game for them this weekend against Munster. But I still feel like Ulster will be the Challenge Cup. I still like it's a case of beat Exeter and they'll be in the Challenge Cup most likely. Come April or whatever that comes back in March or April. And that would be a fairly okay result for them because realistically, they needed a wing and a prayer to beat Bordeaux at home because Bordeaux looked like a title contender. And they ended up like Bordeaux, like that's the 6th time in a row they've scored more than 40 points in Europe. Like insane.
Wow, that's a good stat. I didn't know that.
What do you make of Carberry's, kind of
I love
reaction to the crowd?
I
Yeah, I
love
do
it.
like that.
The Ravenhill crowd are always one of the most boisterous. They're always one of the loudest. If you're going to be like that, you're going to have to be able to take it back. And I think they will.
love
Most
it.
of them will. Do you
It
know?
was a great kick as well from right out on the touchline. Like,
And that was
especially when you're right-footed from the right-hand side.
That
like,
was a
they're hard
crucial
kick.
moment in that game because that was just where it felt like, okay, I think it's done now. I think Bordeaux are
Screws
going to kick
turned.
on, and they did. I think if that kick misses, there's always a chance, sloppy penalty after a try, something like that, and Ulster get back into it because it was very back and forth. But no, fair play to Joey for draining it and for giving the crowd some. Like, look, crowds respect that. All the most boisterous crowds in the world respect it when a player gives it back to them. Do you know, you can't have it both ways.
Finn Russell did it last year. Can't remember where it was at now.
In
Gloucester.
King's Home. Yeah, it was the name. It was Gloucester. Yeah. And
I think rugby needs more of that.
Oh, it does. Yeah, definitely.
Top level bands.
I thought you were supposed to respect the kicker anyway. So you shouldn't have needed to shush them.
I think those days are
shush
long
themselves.
I feel like the respect the kicker thing only really exists at international level. I think when it goes to club level, I think that kind of like etiquette kind of takes on less importance and less adherence.
It's very much the case in Thomond and in Dublin. In Galway and in Ravenhill, it's not really a thing. Well, it is to a degree, but not
fair, you're fair game in those ones.
Yeah, exactly.
So where are you going next then?
We'll go Munster next. Because I actually think if you had said to me the Munster get 6 points from their first 2 games, I'd have taken it because Castaway are just they're a really frustrating team. I respect them so much because their identity is narrow, kick heavy, bully you, rugby, always in a cold, wet night over in Cast.
Their club shop is a gazebo, I noticed.
I've seen that.
Boutique de l'Officiel in the corner is a gazebo. I thought you were supposed to have money in France.
Which is just so perfectly cast. But I think, if you'd said to me that Munster gets 6 points, I'd have taken it. The only disappointing factor is obviously the game was there to be won. Had Munster gone down the field and scored, it would have been a steal. For anyone who didn't see it, Dean Bluler goes off after 20 minutes with a concussion. I wish him the best. It looked like quite a nasty collision. I wish him all the best. Craig Casey goes off about 5-6 minutes later with a knee injury. And I will admit, I turned to my friend and I said, I think that's game. And I'm not a cynical person, but for me, for Munster to win, set piece was going to be massive. Cast aren't the best scrummaging team in the top 14. We could get parity with them, no problem at all. But losing Bluler was a massive loss. And in terms of moving them around, Craig Casey's width on his passing and things like that were going to be more helpful than a more erratic person like Paddy Patterson, who played well. But obviously Craig Casey is in really, really good form. We've seen that on Ireland duty. So when we seen those go off, it felt like that could be that. They almost stole it. Cast deserved the win. Overall, 6 points is good, but Munster, like Connacht, have their 2 toughest games yet to come. They've Saracens at home, they've Northampton away. But just to make matters worse, Munster have gone from injuries are clearing, blue skies are ahead, to 7 knocks at the weekend. If not 8. I think Brian Leeson was actually okay, so I think it is 7. So you could be looking at quite a few lads missing even by the time Europe was back around, and that's the frustration, because that's what kind of happened to Munster last year. They came back to play Northampton, or they came back to play Exeter in round 2 last year, and they were starting to have players drop like flies in the wrong positions, and it cost them because they felt they weren't able to use their bench. And it could be the same, but still, I'd be still pretty happy. Like I said on my own show this morning, I was like, I think level par. If you're to give Munster a score, it's level par. Like, it's fine. You'd rather you've got the tough holes left. You'd rather be ahead of it, but it's okay.
Yeah. So then moving on to the juggernauts, as they are always referred to.
The Galacticos, I think I'm trying to, because the Galacticos have become a very dirty word here in Ireland all of a sudden since it started being used.
I don't
So
think
I'm
they're
gonna
the
go with that.
Galacticos. I don't think it's fair to call them the
Of
Galacticos. I don't
course,
think
it's fair. They've got the biggest
no, I
budget in
don't
Europe.
think
Own it.
I don't think two players makes you the Galacticos.
No, but they got the biggest budget in Europe. Like, do you know what I mean?
Oh, no one says any of this about Toulouse. No one says
Yeah, but
any of
Toulouse's
this about
budget is
Toulouse.
slightly smaller, and I
Oh,
support
it's
the
not really.
Galacticos.
Toulouse spend 47 million euros a season, not all on salaries, but they still spend
47
it.
million.
Yes.
But the difference is in Ireland, if you look into the books, you think, oh my God, we're not on the same level. The only funding that's in the RFU budgets is what the provincial does, because in Ireland you don't have to disclose every layer. It's not like the UK where everything has to be visible on a certain date, every book, every whatever. Anyways, that's a boring conversation that we're not going to get into. It's just fun, right? It's fun to talk about these things every once in a while. Europe has been dull. Let's wind people up. Like, let's just say Antoine Dumont's the best player in the world, because he fucking is at the moment. And Leinster, the Galacticos, and I don't know, Louis Bielbiari is one of the most exciting players in the world. There we go. Clip that. But Leinster, disappointing at the same. Like, don't get me wrong, like they've got 9 points, but like beating
Wasn't
Bristol,
great, was it?
beating Bristol by only playing for 40 minutes is not exactly Leinster of old. How often have we seen Leinster in recent years? And I think I may have said it the last time that we were on, that like they'd go into games like that and they'd have a 1 at halftime and they'd win by 45 points. Whereas that game, they didn't get going until their bench came on. And then the Claremont game was just a big shock, because I don't think anyone expected Claremont to come and to play as well as they did. They were excellent.
I think Leinster are evolving and they're trying to jouer more, and it didn't click in either of the games, but it's starting to make the signings of RG Snyman and Geordie Barrett look less like,
less random.
Say the word.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say waving you something around, but I'm not going to say that.
You can still say that. That's still true.
It's looking less just like doing that and more like, oh no, we actually did this for a reason. And like I said, it didn't click, and it's a big shift away from it's still Joe Schmidt's legacy of control to actually no, we're gonna jouer. And it's gonna take time, and it didn't click against Claremont and it didn't work. But I'm enjoying.
The only thing is, what's the one thing that did not go well for Leinster at the weekend? Line out. And Leinster's big focal point over the last couple of years, basically since about 2020, has been moving down the field, putting you under pressure. Teams would typically have a high penalty count against Leinster. They'll go down the line.
Yeah, because they pay the refs. That was a joke. That was a joke.
I did not say that. But they'll go down the line, but their lineup hit was only at 52%. I think that's a massive reason. I don't think Leinster's attacking brand is necessarily, like I said it myself, I think since Stuart Lancaster has left, Leinster's phase play attack has decreased massively.
Yeah,
like
massively. Have you seen Racing's phase play attack?
I'm not saying anything about Racing. We're not here. This is not the Parlez-vous whatever show. I don't know what it's called. Sorry, Hugh.
Parlez-vous?
Something like that. I don't know. It's
Parlez-vous English.
French. It's Hugh's French page, but anyways, I think Leinster have regressed in attack, but I think what we've seen from Geordie Barrett, more so against Bristol, is I think if Leinster are to get their attack flowing, it's going to be Barrett 12, Henshaw 13, and Ringrose in the wing. I think that's where it is.
I think it looked good.
Because I feel like Henshaw's best rugby in the last couple of years has been from 13. We've seen it in the autumn. He's playing really, really well at the moment. Contract year as well, but he's playing really, really well at the moment. Ringrose also in a contract year, played really well yesterday. Barrett at 15 is fine, but I feel like if you want to get all the best pieces on the pitch at the time, I think it's Barrett 12, Henshaw 13, Ringrose on the wing. And yes, Ringrose isn't a recognised winger, but in a Nienaber defensive system,
it worked.
It'll work. Do you know what I mean?
It's funny how playing a player where he played for the All Blacks in a World Cup final seems to work really well.
They didn't win the final, so
no, exactly. I was about to say it didn't seem to
work.
They nearly did though for the last few years either, haven't they? So
if he had kicked it, they would have. So
Maybe Leinster
But-
should find Sean Klein. He was important in holding up that maul that won South Africa.
They
that
can't.
World
He's
Cup.
injured.
Fuck
So,
So
so
that game back again where you trying to get me to fuck off. Is that it?
so I have made my personality the guy who enjoys Geordie Barrett at Leinster. That's who I am now, and he's fucking amazing. He's
He's
so
he's
good.
unbelievable. Like I'm like people will get the impression of me that I don't rate Jordy Barrett or things like that for what I'm going to say in the next few months. I think Jordy Barrett is a baller. I love Jordy Barrett. My only issue
Here's a slight segue. Is he better than his brother or not?
no, no one is like
Which
He's
one?
better than
you know,
Scott.
apart
That's
from
right.
obviously Rugby Jesus over in Harlequins. Nobody is as good as Bowden Barrett in the last 10 years. No, Jordy is an unbelievable
I
player.
didn't
and he's
realize
gonna
how
be-
massive he was until he
He's
stood
big,
next to
man.
Jamie Roberts, and Jamie Roberts looked like just a normal
I
human.
think there's a
He's nearly
picture
the
of him
same
next to
size as-
RG Snyman as well. He's pretty. I didn't realize he was
Yeah.
quite that tall as well.
he's,
You know.
he's huge. He's 6'5", and he's got a
He's-
head the size of a watermelon.
He's nearly the same size as Scott. I think Scott's 6'6".
Yeah,
So-
I think Harley looked it up for me earlier. Scott is 2 centimeters taller than him.
Christ. That's
This is-
not a
this is
that's a
second
good
best.
family, by the way. Like talk about like usually in every family of like rugby players, there's always one who's like average, but like the most average of them is probably Scott, and he's world class. That's saying something.
Yeah,
Well,
someone
so
said
they're the rugby. Well, you got the Burgess family in the rugby in the NRL rugby league, and you've got the Barretts of rugby union, haven't you? And farmer background.
Yeah.
That'll be what it is.
we could just claim all the Tuipulotus as well. Claim them all.
Yeah, that's true.
Scotland will claim them all. Excuse me, Scotland will claim them all.
So I think it's fair to say that Leinster didn't click in the first 2 games, but I think they will click. Probably in the knockout phases, and then we're all in trouble. I do think that
see.
they will. By the time that's the thing, with this European format, is the first 2 pool games don't really matter. You can't, because it's so long, not just to the knockout stages, but to the next pool games. There's a lot of water to go into the bridge between now and then. A lot of
I
training
don't think
sessions.
Leinster are getting a home semi-final this year, though. That's the only thing. I can't see them picking up the 10 points that'll probably be necessary, because I feel like from here, Bordeaux and Northampton will win out, and they're both on 10 at the moment. Like Toulouse have to go to South Africa, so more than likely they're not going to win down there. They'll probably send
But
down a
Toulouse got to
scrap
go to
team.
South Africa. I didn't
Yeah.
realize. Where are
They
they
have to
going?
go to the Durban in round 3, yeah.
Oh,
So I feel like that puts it in Bordeaux's
I'm
favour.
excited for that. I want to see the Springboks play Toulouse.
It's not going to happen though. It's going to be a world class Toulouse team, because it's still going to have like Malia and Capuzzo and
Yeah.
lads like that. But
Yeah,
it's still gonna be
sends the B team out, sends Peter Arquette, Ange Capuzzo, and Juan Cruz Malia.
there'll be an Entmac there, just not the one you're expecting.
Yeah,
But like that's again to go back to the point I made earlier. Who plays where and when is massive. I don't
Yeah.
think Leinster will get a home semi-final. I think that's a big factor. Now, if Leinster have to go to England for a semi-final, I don't think they'd be scared. If Leinster have to go to Bordeaux for a semi-final or to the south of France, I think it's a different prospect.
I don't think Bordeaux have got the pack to challenge. I think they're light up front. Is my view on Bordeaux.
Yeah, but
I've just had a little look.
Well,
The
they
Sharks
click.
are playing Toulouse in Durban, and then in week 4 they're traveling to Bordeaux.
yeah, it's going to be literally B team down, B team back up again.
They can
in
plane
boats.
pool. They can share a plane.
Yeah, they actually can. Well, how far is Bordeaux from Toulouse? Like 2 hours? Grand.
Yeah, by South African
I
standards.
think it might be closer than that.
Around the corner.
Both fairly. Bordeaux's on the coast. Toulouse is slightly inland, isn't it?
Eastern.
Carcassonne way. Yeah, slightly southeast. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, right, come on. Enough of that nonsense. Let's talk about some proper rugby. So the URC is back.
We still going.
So let's do predictions for the round 8. So thank God there's only 8 games to talk about and not a million like there was last episode. Share screen. So it kicks off. Now it's not everything is on the same day. Oh, I need to.
What about the
about
post
Ulster-
Christmas?
Ulster Friday night, the first game, isn't it?
What are you
Yeah,
saying,
Munster,
Caolan?
Ulster. I was going to say, what about the second round of Christmas game? Because we don't know when we're recording next. So
Let's we're not predicting 2 rounds in a go. Right.
That's
Let's
Too
just
much work for me.
stick to this. Right. Stick to the knitting. So Ulster Munster. 2 teams in need of a result. 10th
mean-
against 11th. My goodness.
table says it's 10 against 11. Look, whoever wins this, history says Ulster win. Ulster always beat Munster and Ravenhill, it feels like, about 4 times out of 5. If you go off like years, or at least that's how it feels. Munster need it, but they're going to be rotated out. It looks like none of their internationals will be involved. They've obviously have a couple of injuries on top of that, like Bluler, like Abrahams, like Mike Haley. So big ask for Munster to get results. I think Munster are in that tricky position now where getting top 2 in the European pool to get a home knockout game looks unlikely, and getting a home knockout game at the URC also looks nigh on impossible, because I can't see Munster picking up 2 wins in December with their current injury list. If they can get 2 points, I don't think it'll be the worst thing in the world, because they've Ulster away and they've Leinster at home. But this one is, Ulster just haven't looked great. Like, even relative to injuries and whatever, they haven't looked great. Halfback seems to be a bit of an issue. I don't think Doak or Morgan are playing very well. I think stylistically they still look like the Dan McFarlane team that tries to run over the top of you, but they don't have the
look
capital.
old-fashioned. That was my takeaway from the Toulouse game, is they look old-fashioned.
They are very much so at times. And the thing is, I think they have the players to be more expressive, to be more open, with Sheridan, Izuchukwu, McCann, Wilson. I will back them to win here because it's Ulster at home. It's an Interpro. They badly need it, and especially after shipping 40 points at home last week and 60 the week before, I think they will get the job done. But both of these teams, I won't write off either of their seasons yet, but it's time to start picking up a couple of wins.
Ben, over to you next. Benetton against Zebra. There's only one winner here, surely.
Yeah, Benetton are going to win that comfortably. Yeah. I think today's result puts them in, the right frame of mind for winning that derby.
Yeah, it'd be good to know Benetton's next string of fixtures, because if they could put a bit of a run together, then that will silence a few critics. He said, hoping someone would look up their next run, please.
I'll have a look.
It's 2 games against Zebra now.
2 games against Zebra.
Yeah.
A chance to get back on the horse, I think it's fair to say.
But there's only 2 league games after that, isn't there? Because one in the end of January and one in mid-Feb, and that's it until March, I think. So it's quiet, isn't it?
The end of January is the next URC round after the new year, and then it's middle of February.
Yeah. Stormers against Lions. It's an opportunity for your boys, isn't it, Alan?
I think so. I think this is our chance to be. We normally struggle in Cape Town, but I think the Lions should win it. But Stormers, this time of year, have got a very, Cape Town is going to be rocking, absolutely rocking if they play in a Greenpoint. I think they're going to be playing in Greenpoint for this one. I think the Lions would win it, but it should be a really good game. And I think for the next game as well, that's probably my game of the round. I think the Sharks play the Bulls. Yeah, so let's go with the Sharks for that one, I think.
I want to get everyone's views on this one. Sharks Bulls. This is a big game, right? I agree with Alan. It's potentially the game of the round. It's 6 versus 3rd. That's the thing about the Bulls, is we're all like, it's disaster o'clock, and they're still 3rd. And they've been on the road for a long time. What's everyone saying then? This is what we live for, isn't it, as URC fans?
Yeah, I think the Sharks are probably, or the Bulls have. You're right. The Bulls have been traveling quite a lot, so I'd probably say that the Sharks are going to take that one. I think it'll be close though.
Obviously, from the Curry Cup, the Sharks won. How about you, Caolan? What are you seeing from Sharks Bulls?
The Sharks that played against Exeter, and as much as Exeter aren't the litmus test, it's just hard to write them off. Now, they've got a lot of injuries at the moment. I think they're the team announcement for the... Who do they play this weekend?
I think that's one of those injured lists.
Yeah, no, it probably is to a degree, but I'd give them the benefit. Khaleesi at 8 really seems to be working as well. However,
I was going to comment on that.
Has brought that in. I go Sharks there. Bulls are still fine. You just get worried that they just go through runs, or they just lose games that you just have no right to lose. That's the only thing.
Osprey Scarlets.
You've got to pick Scarlets for that.
This is the wrong team always wins. How are we only 9th? What's gone wrong there? We were like 4th last time I checked. I don't even know what to say. The wrong team always wins these Welsh derbies. Whoever's having a good season, whoever's ever having a shocking season, the one that's having a shocking season always wins the derby. It's the ultimate cliche of all the form goes out the window. And the Ospreys have got have got to turn up. They've got to turn up. It will be bad times if they lose this. I think the Scarlets pack has come on far enough that they won't bully us. At least that's my hope. But we just got to worry about our discipline. We've got to worry about our exits. Yeah, so I'm nervous. I'm always going to be nervous about this game. For people who don't know, Scarlets and Ospreys don't like each other. Not friends. They do not get on, have quite different views on things. So yeah, big game now. I'm not going to predict it. I want to hear everybody else's prediction.
No, you have to give a prediction here. We do game of the week on this channel. You have to do a
Well,
prediction.
I'm going to say that I'm backing my own team just because I always back my own
I
team.
agree. I think Scarlets are going to. It'll be close. Well, actually, no. Let's go with 15 points for Scarlets.
That is
I'll just go
bold.
Ospreys just to be
That
the
is
heel.
bold.
I'll just go Ospreys.
Scarlets by 5.
Right, Leinster versus Connacht. Any discussion
Let's-
needed here?
Leinster should
No.
win this. Connacht, because they have rested their internationals the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks if you include the weekend Ireland played, will have some back. But it's in Dublin, or it's in the Aviva more so than just in Dublin. It's in the Aviva. You would back Connacht to get the job done, or Leinster to get the job done. The only thing is, Leinster will have players who have to be minute managed. So I don't know what sort of a team we're going to see from Leinster, because they do have a lot of injuries in spots.
We've said that a lot this season, though. And
Yeah, no, they've had a lot more injury hit year than other years. That's why we've seen the likes of Liam Turner on the wing more often, or moves like that we don't typically see lads in maybe they're not first choice position. We could even see maybe Harry Byrne at 12 this weekend, for instance, with Jordy Barrett back at 15 again, depending on who's fit and available. But I'd still go Leinster, because ultimately, even though Jordy Barrett against Bundy will be a lot of fun if they're up against each other, still have to go Leinster.
Warriors versus Edinburgh. Maybe we spoke too soon with Sharks Bulls being the pick of the
This
round.
is game of the week.
This is a game.
It's game of the week. It's game of the week.
In
This is me
Hampden.
being purely objective, and it's at Hampden, which obviously hosted the Rangers Celtic game today, which went to
Ticket
extra time
sales
and
going all right?
penalties.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, I think it's.
I think Jamie Lyle mentioned it on commentary today.
Upwards of
It's supposed to be
40,000,
well.
45,000.
No idea.
The one thing I will say
Yeah.
is the Premiersports promo of this has been good. It's a good promo for this.
I saw it. I saw it today. Yeah. I think this is. I mean, heart wants Edinburgh to win. Head says Glasgow's going to win. I think 2 reasons. Their centre pairings are
They're better than you, and they're better than you.
All right. I think it's going to be a battle up between. Obviously, Sione and Hugh Jones will start 12 and 13. I think Tom Jordan will start at 10, and they'll have. I think Carstane might be back. Did he play today? Off the top of my head, I can't remember.
I don't think so. I think it was Cancellieri and Mackay.
Cancellieri, yeah. Josh Mackay's been pretty good the last few weeks. I just think Glasgow have got more depth in their back line at the moment. I think we played really well on Friday night. I think Darcy and Duhan aside, I still think there's sort of naivety in that back line. Wes Houston was very good on Friday. I think our wing and fullback are sorted. I just think the centre pairing. I want them to do well, but they're young and they've not played in a game of this magnitude yet. I think Curry might have played in one of the games last season, but again, I can't remember. Obviously, Mosesi hasn't. It'll be interesting to see if he does start. I know I said that at the sort of the outset of our recording tonight, whether Matt Scott or what Ben Zone comes in. Yeah, it's taken him a while to actually do something for us this season, I think. And that was my disappointment so far, is that I think he's underwhelmed pretty much every game. I think apart from scoring on Friday night, still didn't really see him putting himself around the park to the extent you'd expect a 12 to do so. So it's a big call for Sean Everett as to whether he starts him against his brother. I think a mature, sensible manager, and I don't think Sean Everett is a mature and sensible manager, would necessarily make the right choice here, but it'll be interesting to see who comes out. But I also think it's be a bit of battle in the front row. I think Glasgow have got a bit of a conundrum about who they're going to start at too, because Hiddleston seems to have come out of nowhere and he's playing really, really well. And Hooker is somewhere where Scotland are liked. I think Ewan Ashburn, Johnny Matthews, and Dave Cherry, 3 players that have not really nailed down that number 2 shirt at all, really. And I think Hiddleston might be that person to come through for a Six Nations run. I think he'd definitely be in the squad come January, and the Six Nations the Scotland team gets announced. I think he's someone that could probably grab onto that and hold it, because he's shown some real promise the last few weeks. Whether it's too soon for him for this game, I don't know, but it'd be interesting to see if he plays. But I'm excited about it. I do hope we win. I think Darcy and Doohan are playing particularly well at the moment. I think Doohan, since sort of sorting out his contract, maybe he can just start playing rugby again and play the Scottish Doohan will become more like the Edinburgh Doohan, insofar as that he just kind of plays to his his best of ability every week.
Well, this
I
will
do
be
feel like he holds back a bit, but this game is one of those games.
this is Telly Cameras Doohan, isn't it? This
Well,
is
Murrayfield last season when I went, it was the same thing when he scored the winning try. He was bolted off 80 meters.
That try bugs me. He could have gone a bit further in field. He was millimeters away from the touchline.
Yeah, there were a couple of times when his boot nearly, very close to brushing.
Well, it cost him at the start of the
whitewash.
year against Leinster. Scored 2 tries, could have ran them in closer. He kept out wide, and they lost by 2 points.
Well, we talked about this. The way he dabs it down, too quickly sometimes, doesn't he? Instead of looking to cut in or at least trying to brush past the tackle and ground it maybe 10, 15 meters in. But
it's like race cars. They say if a race car can do more than 1 lap longer than the length of the race, it's overbuilt, right? His job is to cross the try line. He's crossed the try line, right?
Yeah.
Not going. You have to pay him. You have to pay him overtime to run around the post. And then Dragons Cardiff 16th against 4th. That's weird.
It's a big disparity there, isn't there?
Look, if Cardiff win this, it'll be 20 in a row against the Dragons in the league. 20
It's insane, isn't it?
So, the form book says Cardiff. Is anybody not saying Cardiff? I mean, look, if you're backing the Dragons, I respect you, is all I'm saying.
I'm okay. I think I'll go with Cardiff. Thanks.
I'll go.
You don't have to respect me.
Cardiff is the logical bet.
Look out for the YouTube comments tomorrow. Then.
Hugh, have you said before, whatever way you think a Welsh Derby at Christmas is going to go, it usually goes the other way.
Apart from Cardiff Dragons, like I said, 20 in a row. It would be fun if Dragons won it.
So the Dragons haven't beaten Cardiff since 2015 or 2014.
Yep, correct.
Nice.
Wow, that's a
I'll go Dragons. Fuck it.
The one thing I'll go back to Glasgow Edinburgh. I know Glasgow got the stronger team to win, but historically, most games are close, and they have been for quite a number of years now. There's not really been more than 2 scores in a game.
I feel like it's spicy this year. I don't know whether I've just fallen for the marketing hype, but I feel like with Glasgow now being well on top, I feel like there's a bit of needle to it now.
No, it'd be nice. Hopefully there will be, because I think historically Glasgow's biggest rivalries been with Munster. Edinburgh doesn't.
Yeah.
Edinburgh, do we have a real rival with anybody? Probably not. Apart from the sort of slightly manufactured one. But if it becomes more organic and natural, and if that starts, at Hampden, which would be a great place for it to start, because such a historic stadium and hosted a lot of, massive rivalries, Celtic Rangers, every year almost in cup finals, and they still managed to get up for it, then it'd be nice to see, 3 or 4 times the amount you usually expect at Scotstoun in a stadium which has got a huge, huge level of heritage to it and goes back to, 160 years ago or whatever when the stadium was built. Be fantastic. And I think, it's a perfect scene for a bit of needle.
Yeah, but again, talking about the Dragons, though, going back to this game, because I felt like I underspoke about them earlier. They, like I said, a good away win up in Newcastle. They need some feel good, because there's a lot of Dragons fans wondering where the next win is going to come from. So if they could get a win here, it would be massive for them. They've obviously had a lot of upheaval with Di Flanagan being relieved of his duties, Filo Tia being promoted. Their signings, I think David Buttress has come out and said that the signings haven't really worked. So the fact is, none of them have really been fit. Apart from Shane Lewis-Hughes, who has now had it. Have you seen this thing about Shane Lewis-Hughes with his finger?
Oh, yeah.
It's to have it cut off in order to play, isn't it?
Yeah, he's had his finger amputated.
I don't want to say anything disparaging, but sometimes you do just need to say either yes or no to your career. If that was me, and I know there's a reason why we don't make it, but Jesus.
No, but the
but I think irrespective of
it,
his career, he had to. I think he's going to lose his grip anyway, wasn't he, for everyday tasks, which is why
it was also what he. There's a video on the Dragons. Go and watch it. It's there. But long story short, it was injured, and then he'd had it fused. So if it was like it was his ring finger. So it's kind of it was like that. So he couldn't make a fist. And what was happening was in everyday life. So to your point, Caolan, it was catching on stuff. And it started getting swollen, it started getting infected, and it was affecting his quality of life. So if he'd have just retired, he'd have had it amputated anyway. because it got to the point where he couldn't like put a t-shirt on or something because it was affecting him that badly. So
We think
he,
just opening a car door would be a bloody nightmare. I mean, I I don't mean to sound pithy or sort of slightly kind of, kind of like yeah, it's just everyday task, like as basic as that, as rudimentary as
yeah,
opening the car door,
to
drawing
be
the
fair,
curtains,
to him,
locking your
like
door.
he's done a video on the Dragon socials talking about it, and it's hardcore. Like he's like you don't see anything. There's nothing graphic, but he's very matter of fact about the fact that he's having his finger off, and he said that it would be the right thing. He said there's a rugby league player down in Australia who's had the same thing, and he spoke to him and he said, yeah, once you get to the point with that injury, it's better to just have it off.
Yeah,
So
this is maybe a slightly inappropriate question to tell me to shut up, but if that was you in that situation, you had the finger cut off, what would you want done with that finger?
They're just
Donate it.
incinerated.
So
What would you want done?
Would you
wear it
no,
on a
but do you-
necklace around my neck.
No, but I mean, just go back to my occupation, because obviously I've been to sort of, incidents where things get cut up, for example. Would you like donate that finger to just for, I don't know, an anecdote, kind of something for them to look at and go,
Yeah,
this is why it was so
if they
bad,
asked
like if they
and
could,
they said
yeah,
we've got some medical research thing that's going on with
that's what I'm
the
getting at. I'm
Institute of
not trying to
Fingers.
be.
The Institute of Fingers is after one. We haven't got a right index, a right ring finger. So what you say? I'd be like, yeah, take it. Or I'd post it to someone I didn't like.
But it'd be interesting because obviously you don't want people to go through that again in the future, right? And if there's any opportunity for it to not to happen to people, and if it would be a good thing for medical science, wouldn't it? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just
but look, if like I said, if someone asks, if someone asks me, I've got a mate who's a doctor, a surgeon, and went to Oxford, and he was always waiting for donations for him to do his research and things. So, look, if someone asked, "Are you using that?" I'd be like, "No."
You just got it sitting in a jar at home. You mind if I just have a quick look?
I didn't intend for this conversation to go that way. I was trying to be
no, it's
sincere.
fine.
so
We're
yeah.
just judging you.
So
But yeah.
that brings us to the end of the show. So thank you everybody, and we'll speak to you. Not sure when, but at some point. I hope everybody enjoys the rugby. Thank you to the Rugby ABC, and I hope
Merry
that everybody.
Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. We won't speak to you
Happy
again before Christmas, and hopefully all your teams win. Cheers.
Cheers.